Time for Piatt Picks with Anthony Scott Piatt, joined by Miguel Iterati. Big fight weekend with Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder on the boxing side of things. And with MMA, we have the UFC with Aljimain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. And also, as Miguel brought us early in the week on Wage Rage, OneFC makes its American debut. It's Demetrius Johnson versus Adrian Moret. So some fun stuff we're going to get to on that. I'm going to hop right into the boxing here. We've got a couple different parlays, a lot of single picks for you, some fun things going on, and a couple of prop bets, including these draws that I'm going to get right into here. Tyler Denny versus Macaulay McGowan. Tyler 16-2, 3 draws, no knockouts. Macaulay 17-3 with 2 draws and only 3 knockouts. Macaulay's last fight was a draw, and I saw Tyler Denny recently fight River Wilson Bent. They drew in their first fight, 10-round fights, by the way. In their second one, it would have been a draw, but they took a point away from River Wilson Bent for holding. So there would have been 2 draws in a row, and that was in November of 21 and right in the middle of 22. So I'm liking that one as a little prop bet. The next one as well, Corey Gibbs and Jimmy First. This is another fight that I watched. Jimmy First won 76-73, but Corey Gibbs got 3 points taken away in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. He got a point taken away. Only an 8-round fight. His mouthpiece kept coming out. Hopefully they get him one that fits this time and it doesn't come out. I think it really took away his momentum too, with it coming out a lot. I think he ended up losing a couple of those rounds, not just the deduction, but losing because of all the trouble. So that fight, if you just give him those 3 points, it's a draw, but I think he wins fairly easily on the rematch. So I put him in a parlay on money line, and then I bet the draw on that one for plus 1280. Again, as long as you bet money line on a parlay and it's a draw, that one will be void and won't count against you. So it's a little bit of a nice insurance and a hedge on that one. Moving on, Chacon Pitters, we've got him in a parlay builder. We'll talk about him later. Lauren Price, we went with her in our parlay. On the round robin, we went with her on points. Sean McComb, who I call McDiddy, he's minus 134. I think, though, he's only going to win on points and decision. So we bumped him to a plus 140. We took that as a single bet, and we're also going to put that in our round robin parlay, which we'll get to in just a minute. Joshua Buatsi, like the knockout for him, minus 410. We did put him in a bet US lock at the money line. We'll show you that in a minute. Now we come to our underdog pick. We've got one this week. I like Steve Spark at a plus 108 over Gabriel Galaz Valenzuela. 16-2, 14 knockouts for Steve. He's lost 1 by 1 knockout. 26-3 with 1 draw for Valenzuela. Let's see, he's got 10 knockouts maybe. So neither one of these guys. Here's what it comes down to. Steve Spark lost to Tim Zhu, and he lost his second fight in China on a majority decision that I don't really worry about. But he lost to Tim Zhu. Now, who he beat Montana Love on a knockout disqualification. Montana had been knocked down, was about to get knocked out. And that's where, if you remember, like, he threw him out of the ring or whatnot and got disqualified. Montana Love lost his shit completely. Flip over to Valenzuela. He lost to Montana on a decision fairly recently. He also lost to Zepeda by decision in Louis Ramos. Now, that Zepeda by decision is interesting. We just picked Zepeda last week to win through in 1 through 4 and 1 through 3, and he did. He is a very good knockout guy. So the fact that Valenzuela didn't get knocked out made me stay with just the money line on Steve Spark at plus 108. I threw the draw in as well on that one. 3 draws total. Watch this fight, Julio Cesar Martinez and Ronald Batista. It's minus 11300 for Julio, plus 710 for Batista. I just think those odds are a bit far and wide than they should be. I'm not saying Batista isn't the underdog, but plus 710 is pretty drastic when you look at both these guys' records. So be careful with that fight. Don't do too much with it. Maybe look at having a little fun on Batista as sort of a little dog watch. And then we're to the big fight. Sal Alvarez, Canelo versus John Ryder. Obviously on our Bet US lock, it was fairly easy for me to put Alvarez at money line, minus 1,800. Knockout in our round robin, minus 370. Gives us quite a bit more value there with minus 370 on the knockout. And then we've got some prop bets. So let me go ahead and grab the sheets and tell you with all that information where we finally ended up. And we'll get these hopefully on the screen for you as well. We do have the draw for Tyler Denny and Corey Gibbs. We did the 8-leg parlay, which would be Tyler Denny, Shakan Pitters, Corey Gibbs, Lauren Price, Ben Whitaker, and Joshua Buatsi. That's a minus 119 in the end. I believe we put $50. Oh, Julio Cesar Martinez and Sal Alvarez. I am sorry. Finish out the 8. Put 50 on that for a win of 92-12. That pulls through for us. Here's our round robin. Louis Green, Lauren Price, points or decision. Method of victory, so we get more value in a round robin. We can lose one, still make some money, so we're going to try and make good money. Sean McCombs, points or decision, plus 140. Buatsi for the KO and Alvarez for the KO. And we put 10 on the 2s for the round robins, $20 on the 3s total. And we went ahead with the 5-leg parlay since we got plus 648 when you combine those 5 legs. $25 will win us 60. So, and then we mentioned Steve Spark at plus 108 is our dog pick. And we also have him as the draw to hedge. All right, now let's get to the fun stuff. A little bit more prop bets. We had the draws. Here's Canelo Alvarez to knock out John Ryder. And these are the rounds that I think can make us some good money. I'm basing it off of round 7. That's a plus 800. Then we have 7 through 9 plus 200. Alvarez to win 7 through 12 is minus 110. Then Alvarez 7 through 8 is plus 330. 5 through 6, which is a bit of a hedge there, but it's at plus 500, just in case he gets him in the 6th round. And then 5 through 8 is a plus 155. When you see these on the screen or you write them down on a piece of paper, you can see how we can win most of these, and they're not exclusive of each other. So we might have, 7 through 8 and 5 through 8, and then 7 through 9. So take a look at those. That gives you an idea of where I like the knockout to be around the 7th round, and you can place those accordingly and have a little fun. Again, these are fairly high paying odds, but they're not really that long of a shot, truthfully. So have a little fun, manage your bankroll accordingly, and have a lot of fun with these. I really like which one I forgot to tell you, and let me go back to this. I apologize. The one I forgot to tell you, folks, is the Bet US lock, and that is a really interesting one because it includes the people that we've talked about, but it also has 4 boxers that weren't available on FanDuel, for example. You have Kim Lundquist, Alexander Gavatnik, Beck Nurmagomedov, and Nathan Rodriguez. The 4 of those were not on most of the main books. So when I wanted to build, as we say, we're trying to average $80-85 back from Bet US with our weekly lock. So our weekly lock will pay for a $100 bet, $81.97 this week. That's Shakan P. These are all money line, folks, on our Bet US locks, money line every time, okay? Shakan Peters, Lauren Price, Ben Whitaker, Beck Nurmagomedov, Nathan Rodriguez, Sal Canelo Alvarez, Joshua Buatsi, Kim Lundquist, and Alexander Gavatnik. All of those are the Bet US lock. 100 makes you $81.97. If you watched our recap on Wage Rage, we've hit, since we started the show, we've done 2 of those. We've won 85 and what was the other, 87 or something like that. So we're going to keep that run going this week. And so there, finally, I've got through a lot of math and a lot of, I've been busy, Miguel, since we did the show earlier in the week,
For sure, definitely. Hey, there's not a lot that I can add there. What you're doing there is, a little bit more of the science behind the weekly betting that you do. as opposed to like any, real in the heart favorites that you love, or anything like that. We're crunching numbers and things, and that's exciting because that's, something that you can, like you said, keep it going. You got a couple of wins on those big parlays. Man, it's got to hurt to hit 7 of 8 on one
Oh,
of
it's the
those
worst.
when, because lady luck means you can't do it every time, right? So
That's right.
I hope I'm not giving you the kiss of death here. I don't mean to. And those all look like relatively safe bets, but putting them
Yeah.
together, it adds a little bit more to the thrill to watching this, putting in a Saturday of boxing. So I want to give you one more. What are the odds for Ryder to make the distance? Win or lose. What are the odds for Ryder to make the distance?
Well, let me look that up for you while we're.
Because what we talked about is, Ryder should be excited for this fight. He's going to be facing maybe some altitude that he's not faced before. Can he overcome that? I balance that off with, Canelo may be more ready with the altitude, but I do balance it off with the fact that it is Cinco de Mayo. He's fighting in Mexico in his hometown for the first time in a long time. And he may already be the biggest star in town, kind of thing. Like I'm not 100% up on music and like all the big Mexican superstars and stuff, but he's got to be pretty high up there on Guadalajara's,
Sure.
uh, like their versions of TMZ are pretty up there. He's got to be on the list.
Yeah.
And now you add to that the big fight atmosphere and that feeling of like everybody wants it. Like just him avoiding media and people and stuff like that is already probably stressful. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I think he's being at home. It will add a little bit of a different feel to the fight. And I balance that off a little bit with the fact that the last couple of times that we've seen Canelo, he's 1-1, but he's gone the distance both times. So his power is not manifested itself drastically like it had. And he's 33.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Part of what to counter for a moment, not that I disagree, but what I guess made me think slightly differently was back to, the word of the weekend, altitude. We've talked about it with the Denver. We're talking about, they're a mile up in Mexico. And we talked, where did John Ryder train? We talked about that a little bit. I wasn't able to find information on it necessarily to give me any, how long he's been there, if is he be trying to get used to the altitude and things of that nature. So, and I know you can't just do that even in a week. You're not going to be used to that altitude.
No,
So
it'll be a factor. It'll be a factor, and like I said, I'm balancing it out with the fact that Ryder probably took it as professionally as possible to get
that's right.
here and is as ready as possible. And it's going to give his all. Whereas for Canelo, this is still a bounce back fight from the Bivol loss. It's now a return home fight at 33. Some of that stuff comes with all the
You're
extra
right.
baggage fighters do try to avoid.
He just had a surgery.
Out to the cousins he hasn't talked to in 15 years, calling him for tickets. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like every cliche you
Right.
want to throw out there, he's going
Absolutely.
to avoid, and he's gonna have to work to avoid it. Like he can't just go,
Uh-huh.
oh, I'm going to pop into this restaurant and have a meal because the press will show up. That kind of
Right.
thing starts to wear on you at home when you have a fight coming up. It's unavoidable. It's not like you're going to be able to tell the guy, hey, I'm eating, catch me next time or whatever. No, but you've got to fight. That's going to be the answer, as
That's
opposed to
right.
fight here, as opposed to you're in Vegas or this or whatever. So I think being at home carries a little bit of particular baggage. I know this guy's a star. I know he enjoys the social media attention at times. And he may not at times in the build up to this fight, or may not have. So I'm giving Ryder. It's also a decent balance, maybe. If you look at what the books are giving you, seventh, eighth round, right around there, there's going to be a knockout, is what they're giving you. After that, Canelo's chance of a knockout drop. They're not
That's
giving
right.
him much chance to do it in the final round. So if he doesn't get him out there, maybe a good balance to go in and say Ryder goes the distance one way or another, whichever one. Ryder loses by a decision, or Canelo wins by decision, or Ryder just goes the distance regardless of the win. Whichever one you can get best odds on will balance out some of the other bet.
Well, it's plus 350 to go the distance. That Ryder's name not attached to that bet. It's just fight, go the distance, or not. Which of course, if it goes the distance, they both made it, but it's plus 350 for the fight just to be there. Doesn't matter who wins, just to go the distance. And at 350, there's some value there, Miguel. I can't argue with that at all. As you said, not only all the stuff you pointed out, but Canelo is also coming off of a surgery between the last fight and this fight. So there's that as well. Is he going to have as much power? Is he going to want to use it as much? Is he going to be a little more careful and kind of put on a show and maybe still do some flashy stuff, but not actually get the knockout, make the home crowd happy in other ways? It is quite possible. At plus 350, it's something to think about. That's a nice hedge against some of the other stuff. If we don't get the knockout, oh boy. Now again, bankroll management, I didn't put a lot on that knockout compared to the other stuff. If the lock hits for us, it covers most of our other bets. If our little 5-leg parlay hits, we're definitely in the money. From there, the round robin can be really juicy. We can lose one and still make a little money, lose two and probably break even. And then some of the single bets should just be bonuses at that point. So that's how I like to build these, where we're not sweating it. Yeah, we're sweating. Are we going to win everything? It's hard to win everything, but these are built in such a way that hopefully we're playing with house money by the end of the night. The last couple fights are just fun for us at that point. Like the knockout rounds.
With Ryder, like I said, I just think that this is a fight whose odds are based on it's Canelo and it's Cinco de Mayo and da-da-da. But, on the ground, if Ryder, can go the distance, he's got a W whether he wins or loses. So
that's right. Absolutely. We've talked about it before, the sort of that Rocky analogy that we mentioned earlier in the week. Absolutely. Because the truth of it is he gets more fights if he can go the distance here. I mean, he'll be well known after this fight more than before, especially in America and Mexico, being from England and not having the same exposure. So it's only good for his career as long as he doesn't just look foolish out there, get blown out real quick. So absolutely. That's what I have for boxing, but honestly, this is a double weekend if there ever was. Triple weekend, let's be fair. It's a double Saturday with one UFC on Friday. Miguel, I don't know which one you want to talk about first, but I asked you off screen and we talked about it Monday in Wage Rage, and we are going to hold you to it. Go ahead and make a couple picks for us on the two main events from each promotion, please.
We'll lead off with one because one is Friday night, so you're going to want to check that out on Amazon Prime. You've got Demetrius Johnson taking on Adriano Morai. Morai, his nemesis. He's 1-1 against him under the one flag. So, you've got the benefit of highlight reels and things like that in the promo packages because it all happened under the one flag. Demetrius was a UFC champion, 125 pounds. For a long time, they sent him to one basically because they had run out of competition and they weren't fond of the weight class. And Demetrius has gone over there, despite the loss to Morai. He's kind of sealed his legacy as if you don't mention him in your pound for pound all-time great GOAT list or whatever, you're wrong. Basically he's got to be a top 5 guy with everything he's done. When you consider he's small and the actual skill he shows in the ring, he's clearly the most skilled guy. So Morai's in the neighborhood. Morai's got to win over him. We get a trilogy fight with all the bells and whistles of that. And you got Demetrius at say minus 150 right now. It's been about where he is. And I would look into Demetrius winning this fight, and I would look into see if he does it. It's a 5-round fight, and he may do it within 3 rounds. I believe he got him out in the 4th round last time. And he's a guy that does like to improve on his performances. And, based on his skill and track record, it's hard to bet against him. So I look for him to try to really put a stamp on this one by improving on his performance from last time.
So 3 or 3 or less in
Yeah,
Demetrius
if
Andrade.
you'll probably
Yeah.
get better odds for that.
Yep.
And I think in the third is what you want to look at for a finish, possibly.
Okay, nice. You could go direct, yeah. Round 3 for that extra bonus money, I'm sure. And I haven't looked into these yet, but as you know, with the Pavlich pick that Miguel had made from our first relaunch show here, that was a really nice winner for us as well. So I'll be taking to heed what we're doing here and sprinkling a little something on these as we go too. So that's Friday night. Wow. Starting off great. It's their first one in America ever for OneFC. Denver, so same basic altitude as where Canelo Alvarez is fighting. Before we leave that, or you can come back to it, but I know you mentioned the Muay Thai fight as well, which altitude may play into as well. Sort of that key word for the weekend, altitude. May as well knock that one out since we're still on Friday night at this point.
For sure. I mean, this is one that ASP's been showing us where we can find numbers late in the week and things like that. This is one you're going to want your antennas up and be on the lookout for, I think. You got the Muay Thai World Championship, so you're going to have to find a book that gives you odds on it. But if it does, I suspect the world champion Rotang, who's from Thailand, will be heavily favored. He's fighting Edgar Tabarez. Tabarez is out of Mexico. Here in Mexico, in Mexico City, Tabarez has trained his life at altitude, and they're going to Denver. And Rotang is from Thailand, which is sea level. Now, he's probably done some camps and things, but if it's ever going to show up, it could be in this fight.
We talked about that. Not very many people go to Denver and are half a mile lower than they live. This is a pretty rare phenomenon for this Mexican guy to be fighting in Denver, but at a lower altitude than he trains and lives in. So it's really not any sort of detrimental factor for him, but is it for his opponent? This is a very interesting one. So you're kind of suggesting take some money on the underdog there at that point, it sounds like.
You got to look at what numbers you're getting because it's Muay Thai, the books aren't all going to offer it, and because ones that do, may not know what they're doing, and you may get odds that are just wowing you either way. You know what I mean?
Let's set a watermark for our viewers and listeners. Then, do you like him at plus 300, at plus 600? Where do you like the underdog if you could get it? You know what I mean?
I think at minus. If you had Rotang at minus 500, that's a safe number. I'm thinking that they might have an astronomical number on the guy based on reputation, and if the books are at the level where they're going to pull his highlight reels up on YouTube, the number is going to be skewed because the guy is a living highlight reel. Tabarez is more hardworking, less stuff available on the Mexican scene from him, but he's got a couple of factors as well as the altitude working in his favor. Is he has known about this fight now for several months. He's not a late replacement. He's had a full camp. The fight came about, for him. He was available on his contract and things, and he wanted to do it. I understand from contacts with both groups that the negotiations were very simple, very fast. They got the signed paper within a week. No back and forth, no real problems in any way, shape, or form. The guy wanted to fight. And he's a Muay Thai guy out of Mexico. Mexico may not be known for its Muay Thai, but he certainly knows what he's getting into with this guy, with Rotang. And he's gonna have his what he brings. I don't think he's gonna be a guy that backs down. I think he comes forward, applies pressure. He's got legs like tree trunks. I guess they all do in Muay Thai, But I think he's going to be a little bit bigger, a little longer and thicker than the champion. He's just going to have to know how to fight and hopefully extend it a little bit, make the guy waste energy in the atmosphere there and drink it up. I don't know. You could run into a situation here where you're talking about, the varsity team playing the junior varsity team. And I don't mean that as a disrespect. I just feel that Muay Thai is such a wide range across the world that you got to feel like maybe the world champion from Thailand, may be the cream of the crop. You know what I mean? And the champion from Mexico may be more of a regional power. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
And
But
that
it's
could
something to look
manifest
at.
itself, and you're not going to be able to deal with that. But I think that's a real hard read to make because Rotang is so flashy.
Right.
He's just so when you watch his highlights, it really literally is the guy is a total package in terms of showmanship. You know
Okay.
when he has a tough fight, everything. When he has a tough fight, like he'll lie down and cry and hug the opponent and thank him and stuff like that. And he's just like I said, um he's got star power galore. And I think that could be, if you ask one, that they might have him at minus 3,000. And in
Right.
that case, I
And
think you
that's
want to
what,
look at the Mexican for
yeah.
sure, because
Yep.
anything could go wrong. So what we're looking for, if the Mexican's actually like plus 1,500 or something like that, and that's Edgar de Barras. I don't mean to be, disrespectful, but if Edgar is at plus 1,500, then what you got to do is you got to hope that the 8 picks on ASP's parlay can support one more, that Lady Luck doesn't bust up, or that rather, this is one where Lady Luck can bust up and we can preserve
Let's
ASP's.
say. Well, and honestly, let's be
Anyway,
real.
well,
At plus 1,500, Miguel, a guy could put 10 bucks and win 150. You just single bet at a plus 1,500. That's great money on, because you lose 10 bucks, no big deal, but you gain 150. You got a nice night out with your sweetie or whatnot. So, again, if he's at plus 1,500, but so what we're going to point out, and we used to call these a lot, again, starting our shows years ago. This is not a dog pick from Miguel. This is a dog watch. Watch the underdog, see what happens, see where the odds are, bet accordingly. So not a dog pick. You're not saying he's going to win. You're saying maybe chaos happens in the altitude and
yeah,
whatnot.
and
And
the other
odds
the
are
other thing
crazy.
here is ASP suggesting. The other thing here is start to get educated on this roster, because one is going to be back in the United States before the end of the year. They will have another show. I believe it's scheduled for September or October in Atlanta already. So we should start to be familiarizing ourselves with this roster for betting purposes as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess that brings us to our Saturday MMA, which is UFC. Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. Gilbert Burns is also on the card. I don't want to say there's only a couple people fighting, but really we're going to talk here about Aljamain Sterling. Been on an incredible run. Henry Cejudo coming back after a 2 or 3 year retirement, something to that effect. And we talked about this in Wage Rage. Maybe he's getting older. He's not as fast anymore, but he's wily. He's got the wrestling ability. So the 2-part pick that I wanted to hold you to, you've locked in Demetrius Johnson. Who are we locking in here? Aljamain or Henry Cejudo? It's time. You're on the spot. The clock starts now. Let's go.
I'm going to take Cejudo.
Let's
And
go. Let's
there
go.
are a lot of factors why I shouldn't, including age, the 36, the layoff, the fact that he's a younger, not a younger guy in a smaller weight class. I think the smaller weight class of, I think older fighters hold water better at heavyweight and light heavyweight than they do in the lightweight. So, despite that, I think that his pedigree is, he likes to insert himself in the GOAT conversation.
Right.
And he's close. I don't want to put him in there yet, because he also, did take a few losses earlier in his career and stuff that I don't think I think he asked for a lot of credit for the things he's done already, including taking 3 years off in his prime, which he should never have done. Unless he had an injury that he really needed to recover, but he didn't rebuild his body to come back at 145, or maybe in the long term he does head that way. It'll get tougher for him there, But I don't know why the layoff. I don't, and some of his, there are reasons to pick against him, and Aljamain seems to be at the top of his game. But I think he's also a very calculated guy. I think for all his goofiness, sometimes I think he does have a good read on his career and what he needs to do. And I do think that coming back and being champion and operating at a high level now, we'll see him trying to do that for the next couple of years. as he goes out. And then continue to make his argument to be, one of the best of all time. If he were to add a 145-pound championship at some point, you can't really deny him that, But for right now, I think, he may make a top 15 list, not the top 5 like he thinks.
Yeah. I think that's more fair as well. And as you say, maybe the layoff was his opportunity to pull it off and it was squandered, but if he wins this fight and wins a handful more, then it's going to be in the conversation. Absolutely. No question at that point. But that's what's great about the weekend is Demetrius and Cejudo both have an argument for top 10.
Right. For sure. And with Aljimain, Aljimain, I don't want to come across as disrespectful to him, but there's still a few open questions here. Okay. So, the way he originally won the belt with Jan, with, going down and taking it on, the disqualification kind of thing, he kind of let that negativity get, guide the rhetoric around the fight. He didn't really say much, but he let Jan to say, hey, that's not the way to win a championship. You're not a man. And, Jan was, kind of insulting in many ways there, right? So he seemed to be handling that poorly. But once they did the rematch, you realized that, he just let Jan do a lot of talking, but that he was, preparing very well, and he did real good. And I at that point, I thought maybe he managed the whole mental part at a higher level than I was giving him credit for. So this fight is about finding out which of those Aljamain Sterlings is really the guy who's here. Is it the mentally strong guy who guided the Jan, rivalry to a T? Or is it the kind of mentally weak guy that we saw, accepting a belt that a lot of other people wouldn't have accepted? You know what I mean? So that's a little bit of the difference. That's a little bit of the difference. Not difference, but that's a little bit of what I need to find out about Aljimain, because I don't have the answer yet. I don't know. He's impressed me and unimpressed me with this Jan thing, and I need more answers than that before I talk about him at Henry Cejudo's level or Demetrius's level as one of the all-time greats. He left that open to question. And that's why I think with Cejudo, he's fighting a guy who will have the mind game sealed up.
No, it is interesting because if Mirai were to take out Demetrius and then Aljimain, right? So if both your picks were wrong, oh, heaven forbid. But if both your picks are wrong, you suddenly have 2 more guys. You now have 4 guys that can claim to be in the top 10 of the division of all time. You could
argue that you've
all in one weekend.
You could argue if you've got them there now. So those other guys are on the cusp. Aljimain, like I said, in my feeling, I'm not over his, like I said, he kept quiet when he won the belt, but sort of, like I said, there were fighters that say, you don't win the belt that way, and, blah, 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 but maybe they never had the opportunity. He sort of just let all that ride and kept quiet and didn't look great doing it sometimes, especially with Jan, his opponent, leading the charge against him. That's not a cool move, blah, blah, blah. And, he used, stronger language than that. You know what I mean? So the bottom line there is he rode out that wave, didn't look great doing it. Then with the rematch, he established himself that he was, in Jan's neighborhood, and everything Jan was saying is fine, but he's a better fighter. And he showed that. So I'm okay with that. That was a good cleanup. But now what do you do for an encore? Do you go back to taking a step backwards, or do you go back and charge forward? I don't know yet about Sterling. I don't know what stuff he's made of yet. With Cejudo, with gold medalist, and the way he's conducted himself, I mean, the bottom line is Demetrius Johnson wiped Cejudo out in their first fight. And Cejudo won the second one. He's a guy that if you give him, the chance, he's not a guy who's going to find a way to lose. That finding a way to lose isn't in his makeup. He'll find a way to win, and I think that could be what he takes to the next level in this fight.
Yeah. So overall, a pretty darn good weekend, and in the MMA side of it is more competitive. There's some great boxing matches throughout the day. There are two separate cards, by the way. There's the English card with Watsi on it, and then, of course, Canelo fighting in Mexico, which will be later at night for those of us in America, of course. So we will get to have boxing on sort of all day Friday night with the OneFC, UFC. Their main event Friday night, or Saturday night, excuse me. The main event for UFC, the pay-per-view, doesn't start until 10 p.m. I found that interesting. The Canelo pay-per-view starts early at 7, but when I was betting on Canelo, it still said midnight for a start time. You know, I know those are flexible, but are they really going to try, just a side note, are they really going to try and compete these two events? I mean, a lot of times they'll at least have the main events not on at exactly the same time, but here we've got two pay-per-views listed as competing Saturday night. Seems a bit of a foolish notion to me, but you know, well, I don't know. I don't know if they really want to do that or not.
You know, Cinco de Mayo is Canelo's territory. He's
Right.
back home. To me, not being in Vegas is almost a sign they took a step back. Last year, the news rounds made because, believe it or not, around this time we got the Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal, BMF fight.
Right.
And, the word was that Canelo fought that same day and that Canelo delayed the start of his fight so that they could actually air and show the BMF fight to the public, where Canelo's venue was. So they actually showed the UFC fight there. I don't know what all that means because Oscar and Dana hate each other and all this stuff, but I think that you've got two big players there. I think Canelo took a step back by not being in Vegas, and to be honest with you, the UFC could have let off with, a stronger weight class that's more attractive in terms of pay-per-view buys and things than the little guys. So I think they're in neutral territory. That's a non-starter.
Yeah. It is not in Vegas, as you pointed out, but it is a fairly large stadium there. They did sell out, and tickets were not as cheap as you might have thought. I looked into it. They were getting good money for those tickets. I mean, thousands of dollars for anything, 10 or 15 rows and whatnot, for sure. All your ring sides were ridiculously expensive still. So I was a little surprised at the prices. I believe they gave X amount, 5 or 10,000 away to locals of the cheaper seats, obviously. And I think the stadium holds 50 or 60,000. And after they configured and put some seats on the floor, got a little bit more than that. I don't recall the final number, but I think you ended up with a rather large stadium fight down there. So the excitement live will at least be there. I think the fans are really going to go crazy for Canelo down there. It's going to be fun in that regard.
They'd be partying anyway. It's
right,
July
right.
4th for them. You know what I mean?
It is. That's right.
So, yeah. I think you've got the makings of a fun time. And at the end of the day, on Monday, you're probably looking at Canelo winning. You just kind of hope Ryder makes the end.
That's it. Let's see what happens. I mean, like I say, it would be cool, and it's plus 350 if he does make it to the end. So there's something to that. Might be kind of good for British boxing if he made it and whatnot. There's, part of me's rooting for him. I still think he's getting knocked out in 7, but part of me's rooting for him to make it. So I'll put my money where the math leads me. But I wouldn't be too disappointed if he made it, and I might even hedge a little bit, as you suggested, just so it doesn't hurt so bad.
That's so we'll see. We'll see on Sunday, man. It's gonna be a fun weekend.
It really should be. It really should. So great weekend. Hey, if you've made it this far in, we really appreciate you watching this long. Please subscribe. We really are trying to build our audience after our relaunch, and so thank you for that. I'm on all the social medias, or a lot of them, under Piatt Picks. That's Instagram, Twitter. Look for us other places. We're getting there. Slowly rolling this thing out, preparing to take over the world. Miguel, appreciate your help.